Inside this box I got from eBay are 2 white Apple Macbooks that cost me only 29 Australian dollars plus shipping. What condition are they in and do they work? I actually have no idea. So let's open this up and find out. Alright, let's open it up and see exactly what MacBooks we got. Large pieces of styrofoam. Oh well, at least it's hopefully kept everything pretty secure. And as I can see, the MacBooks in here aren't exactly looking particularly white. Not that that's a bad thing, but okay, a bit yellowed perhaps. Let's see what we got here. Alright, the first MacBook. Apart from being a little bit yellow, it honestly doesn't look too bad. Next one, let's take a look at this one as well. Once again, another white MacBook. It also, from the outside, it doesn't look horrible. I'll take that as a win. With both machines plugged in, let's turn on the power and see if anything happens. We've got a boot chime, and a few seconds later, the second MacBook also chimes. One machine displays a flashing folder icon, and one appears to be booting correctly. So both machines seem to be functional, which is good to see. Which model is this exactly? As both of these were sold as untested, there are many possibilities. 2.1 GHz and 1 GB of RAM means this is likely a completely original early 2008 model. This particular battery is also dead, which could be expected for such an old laptop. And what about the other MacBook? It either has a wiped hard disk, a dead hard disk, or no drive at all. And my macOS 10.7 Lion installer was too new for this Mac, meaning it must be very old. And peeking into the disk utility, it turns out it has no drive detected. Honestly, for $29, 2 reasonable condition MacBooks seems like a good deal. And at the time of writing this, there are still a few of these Macs cheap for sale on eBay. Let's delve deeper into the one with the storage problem, which apart from some yellowing is in really great condition. Even the battery appears to hold some sort of charge. And removing this little protective cover, we get confirmation that the hard disk has been taken out. And since it turns on, it clearly has RAM, but how much exactly? A reasonable 1.25 gigabytes. Clearly this has been upgraded since it was released. And which model is this specifically? It turns out that this is the very first MacBook with the lowest specifications. So let's put in an SSD and hopefully it'll be recognized. These early MacBooks use the older SATA 1 interface, which doesn't work with all modern solid-state drives. Perhaps a different model will work? And I find it crazy that the first MacBook shipped with only 512 megabytes of RAM, and with a maximum supported 2 gigabytes of RAM, I maxed it out with these sticks I had. However, the system still isn't detecting this SSD either, and some of you may have already figured out why. At the time, I thought I'd perhaps need to resort to an old mechanical hard disk, and trust me, I had plenty to choose from. So once again, it was time to grab my 10-cent piece and open up the battery bay. It was at this time that I realized I'd been sliding in the drives upside down, but it did feel like they were clicking into place correctly. However, the SSD still isn't showing up, which could mean the Mac simply doesn't work with modern solid-state drives. Okay, time to go with an old school mechanical solution, which would be somewhat slower. Putting in this very slim laptop hard disk, it didn't sit all that well, and to fill the gap, creating less strain on the SATA connector, I simply glued on a small piece of foam. It clearly detected the hard disk, which may have had Windows on it previously. It did fail to load into Windows, but with the disk detected, I could install macOS to see if everything was alright. And with a login photo selected, we get to see that this is indeed the very first MacBook. And both of the new RAM sticks were detected. And while the battery holds some charge, it is definitely due for replacement. And to make this very outdated Mac more usable, it's time to install a 32-bit version of Linux. And depending on what version of Linux I go with, it may require me to have a basic understanding of programming and/or coding. And that's where today's sponsor boot.dev comes in handy. If you've ever wanted to dabble in learning back-end web development in an engaging and fun way, this is definitely for you. Be it Python, SQL, TypeScript or Go, boot.dev has you covered. As you complete quests, you'll gain levels and achievements. It's all presented like a role-playing game with fantasy elements, and a competitive leaderboard makes learning to code a real adventure. Given the subject of today's video, the course focusing on Linux is a great place to start. All of boot.dev's content is free to read
read and watch, but the paid membership unlocks a lot of useful features and tools. There's a huge amount of content with a focus on areas that have real-world importance. I found that the learning curve wasn't too steep, which is perfect for absolute beginners like me to understand the fundamentals. You even get your own personal AI tutor, a bear wizard named Boots. He's been trained to assist you and contextualize any problems that you may be stuck with. There's also a great Discord community. Boot.dev's goal is to make coding fun, and best of all, you're learning skills that are highly valuable in the tech industry, so why not try it today? To find out more, go to boot.dev and use my promo code Psivewri to get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan. A lightweight Linux version that's also 32-bit I'd recommend is LDME 6, which is still supported. And to easily create a bootable USB, I use Balena Etcher, which makes the process very simple. But no matter what I did, the original MacBook wouldn't detect the bootable Linux USB. However, the newer MacBook would. So you know what, let's focus on making the early 2008 MacBook as good as it can be, putting in an SSD and upgrading the RAM. And this was the original pair of RAM sticks. They still have their dielectric grease on the pins, and this was very clearly the original 120GB hard disk. This MacBook had never been upgraded, and this does mean it does have the small hard disk caddy, which will make sure that the new SSD sits correctly in the slot. That's providing this SSD actually works or is detected. And going in is a pair of 2GB RAM sticks, bringing the total to an insane for the time 4GB. But I'm getting 3 beeps on startup, and this means there is something wrong with the RAM. Perhaps they're simply not seated correctly, and I'm hoping a simple ejection will get them both recognized. Success. It seems to be running with the new RAM sticks, but it isn't detecting the 128GB SSD. I tried one last option, an MX500, which I've had luck running in older Macs previously. This was thankfully detected. And to make this laptop truly portable, let's install a new replacement battery which I bought recently. And since this MacBook has a 64-bit processor as well as a 64-bit EFI, I thought I can install this version of Linux. However, I couldn't get it to boot. And what about a lightweight 64-bit version of Linux Mint? Once again, it did nothing, even in compatibility mode. Well, how about I try the 32-bit version that I downloaded for the other MacBook? This seems to actually work. And running this version should be fine on this system, since the 4GB of RAM we installed will be detected. And a short time later, this 17-year-old MacBook was running Linux from the internal SSD. Time to give it a good cleaning. The coating on the display had started to come off. With other MacBooks displaying this issue, I've been able to simply wipe off the rest of the coating using Selly's household wipes. However, this had no effect on the coating here. I guess I'll just have to live with it. And using some eucalyptus oil, I wiped off the keyboard deck, which was surprisingly grubby. The top casing is also looking very nice after a gentle wipe down. The gunk on the still present rubber feet also came off with ease. And for such an old laptop, it has held up pretty well. These MacBooks were notorious for scratching easily, and has it accumulated much dust inside? Let's find out. And I'd suggest making note of all the screw locations. Following a tutorial is also recommended due to the sheer amount of steps. Apple made it a lengthy task to get inside these MacBooks. I am glad the battery, RAM and hard disk are easily accessible though. But if you want to access the CPU fan, Wi-Fi card, optical drive or processors, you're going to have to delve deeper. These screws on the back don't want to come out easily, and a trick I work out was wedging your thumbnail under the head as you loosen it off. And reading the comments on the iFixit tutorial, many people mentioned these screws being super easy to strip, so be very careful. And even with the correct bit and adequate pressure applied, I managed to strip this screw. Time to give this strip screw remover a go. This sadly didn't seem to be very effective in this case, given just how small the screw head is. And next I tried some pliers, which did manage to turn the screw. And after a very long time clamping down the screw, moving a tiny bit each turn, it finally came out. You really made my job a lot harder, Mr. Screw. Thankfully, it seemed as if all the other screws were much larger and of higher quality. I feel as if this design didn't need to be so complicated, just so much to hold the casing together. And at least the Mac isn't glued together like some more modern laptops. I'm not going to call specific manufacturers out, but you know who you are. And with every single screw required to be removed out, the keyboard deck can be lifted up. There are a number of plastic clips also holding it together, which is somewhat fragile. I honestly don't think it's going to clip back together as well the second time. And before you completely remove the keyboard, be careful as there is a short ribbon cable that has to be dislodged. Now we get to see the tightly packed internals of this MacBook. Honestly, I was expecting more dust. Now, time to remove the fan. This requires taking off this little tinfoil piece, but as much as I tried to be careful, it ripped. And with the wires underneath pushed aside, I could now unscrew the CPU fan, and with a bit of fiddling, it came out without issue. And we can see here the air exhaust fins are lacking in dust. I still thought I would open up the fan since I've gone to a lot of effort just to redo the thermal paste. A brush off was all it needed. After all these years, it clearly saw little use. Now it's time to see just how crusty that old thermal paste is. The heatsink is held on with 4 Phillips head screws, and with the temperature sensor disconnected, the assembly came off very easily. Oh yes, and if you like your paste well done and crusty, this is for you. A bit of isopropyl alcohol got the die surfaces looking shiny once again, and I could be sure this paste wasn't going to transfer heat very well. It's hard as rock. And one other thing I noticed was just how bent the corner of the keyboard deck was. I'm honestly not sure how this happened, and it was like this before the disassembly, and with some gentle bending back into place, it was now somewhat straight. And to keep the hinges nice and tight, I applied a small dab of thread locker to the hinge screws. Almost every screw in this laptop actually has some of this applied, but I figured it couldn't hurt given how much stress opening and closing the screen puts on these screws. I've been using Arctic MX4 paste for a while as it's cheap and effective. This should keep this MacBook running relatively cool. Well, as cool as it can. And with a single fan in such a cramped space, there's only so much cooling it can handle. In place of the insulation foil I accidentally ripped off, I'm gluing in some tinfoil, which should do the same thing. And with the keyboard securely reconnected, I can put it back together. Imagine not plugging it in properly and having to go through the whole process again. Does it still work? Well, it's giving us a singular beep, meaning no RAM is detected. That's quite surprising given I hadn't even removed the RAM during the disassembly process. And now we get 3 beeps, meaning a RAM fault. And I figured I'd wipe off the RAM pins and see if that makes any difference. This time we finally get the boot chime and all is well. With Linux installed, this is now a very usable laptop once again. These early MacBooks had a very decent keyboard for typing, and the connectivity is also great. I miss the days of dedicated audio in as well as out jacks. Performance in light games is totally fine, with some graphical limitations due to the lack of modern OpenGL support. And some games which really should be fine on hardware as old as this do struggle sadly, but there is no shortage of free software on Linux, so you'll be sure to find stuff that works. 1080p YouTube modern web browsing and YouTube playback is also decent, as long as you stick to 720p video or lower. And thanks to modern browser support, even Apple's complex website runs totally fine on here. For such a cheap price, the gamble on these untested MacBooks was definitely worth it. And I might cover this original base model MacBook in a future video. That would be a fun challenge, I think. And these are very outdated laptops, but that does come with some advantages. The light up logo is here, and I dearly miss it on modern MacBooks. This MacBook here is still totally usable, even after 17 years.
As a child, I always wanted one of these MacBooks. They just seem so cool. And funnily enough, back in primary school, the short film we made actually won a MacBook. However, none of the students like us got to keep it. The school ended up keeping it, and I'm assuming once I left a few years later, it probably got thrown out. And here in 2025, there's not really a lot you can do considering the hardware is just so old. But either way, it was a lot of fun taking a look at these MacBooks, and I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the journey. I've got many more tech-related videos coming up in the near future, so stay tuned for those. I'll see you in the next one.